This is Mariusz Skonieczny. I am sitting down with Micah Anderson and Jamie Worm of LEEF Brands, and we're going to discuss something interesting. We're going to discuss Bitcoin strategy. If you are new to this channel, you might not know, but I'm covering LEEF Brands as an investment opportunity. It's the only cannabis company that I talk about in this YouTube channel. And if you didn't have a chance to view my first video about the company, I am putting a link to it in the description below so you can do this. So gentlemen, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
Pleasure to be here.
So Micah, just a few words introducing yourself, and also Jamie too, because most people didn't see you, Jamie, before. So let's start with Micah.
Sure. Micah Anderson. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called LEEF Holdings. Been in the cannabis space for the better part of 25 plus years in California. LEEF Holdings has become LEEF Brands. And today we are probably the largest concentrate provider in the state of California. We service most of the larger brands and retail groups in the state. It's been about 10 years, close to 10 years, coming up on it. And Jamie and I have known each other for quite some time. He has a similar background to myself, so I'll let him introduce himself.
Sure. Jamie Worm here. I have been in the cannabis industry for quite some time, maybe 20 plus years, and Prop 215 era, and started a company called Henry's Original, and watched LEEF grow. Their business model, I think, has proven itself out over time, and really, Mike has just done a fantastic job with the company. And I've had a bit of experience in the Bitcoin world. Have been a Bitcoin investor since maybe 2017, so had the opportunity to see a bull cycle, a bear cycle, and moving into, I think, what is catalyzing to be a pretty opportunistic bull cycle for investors.
Okay, thank you guys. So now Bitcoin is a pretty hot topic, and Michael Saylor is in the news a lot with MicroStrategy, and you guys, came out with this idea to initiate the Bitcoin strategy, kind of similar to MicroStrategy. But Micah, the question to you is, how did you come to the realization that Bitcoin is right for LEEF?
Yeah, this will be a little bit, give me a minute to get through this because I think it's important to kind of frame the whole thing. So when Bitcoin was first brought to me, it was actually 5-6 years ago. It was a staunch no in my mind. I was staunchly didn't know what it was, knee-jerk reaction, not interested. Came up a couple other times throughout the course of running LEEF, same thing. My answer was no. To take a step back from that, I'll give you a bit of my upbringing, and because I think it kind of helped. It was almost, thanks to my dad, it helped me to kind of see the opportunity when Jamie originally was the one that forced me to take a look at it. So growing up as a kid, my dad was very into sound money, and it was like mandatory education for my brother and I to read not only the Constitution and the Bill of Rights of the country, but also to have an understanding of what the Federal Reserve was. His belief was that the Federal Reserve should not have been, it was the beginning of the end to the American way of life, so to speak. So I grew up in this household where that was kind of like the gold standard. Ron Paul, all these various things were very much promoted. I'm a huge Ron Paul fan, still am today. And so, like I said, when Bitcoin was first introduced to me a couple different times, I was looking at it through, I didn't know what it was. So like many people, I just go, no, I'm not interested. I'm used to Federal Reserve notes or the gold. And I'd been buying gold through my cannabis years and taking custody of it myself for quite some time. So how did I end up believing in it? Jamie was the CEO of a company called Henry's, as he just said. I've known Jamie, I've watched him run his business, and then I saw him stepped away, and I remember thinking that's interesting. Why would he do that? And then on social media, started noticing that he was posting a bunch of stuff about Bitcoin. And there was one post that he did about 9 months ago that caught my eye, and it had something to do with, it was like his thoughts on that Bitcoin was the promotion of liberty and freedom, something to that extent. And thought it was interesting. I had Jamie's number. I picked up the phone, called him. He started talking to me a little bit about it and suggested that I read a book called The Bitcoin Standard. I read the book. About halfway through it, I called him back and I'm like, man, I'm kind of like blown away at what this book's talking about. I started buying Bitcoin myself, and fast forward to where we are today. I'm probably 6 books into it, 1,000 hours of listening to podcasts. I've listened to every word I could find of what Michael Saylor's talked about with what he's done with his company. And I brought it to our board about 4 or 5 months ago. Same thing, went through the same hurdles. The board was like, what? No, we're a cannabis company. Like, wouldn't that be a departure from what we're doing? And had them listen to the same stuff that I did and went through the same process. And I actually had Jamie join one of our board meetings and run through his spiel and then turned them. Now we've got Bitcoiners on the board, and for the most part, they're all believers. And so I'll let Jamie get into like the nuances of what we're going to be doing, but I've been running the company for close to 10 years. I've been in the cannabis industry for, like I said, 25 plus years. I've seen the ups, the downs. I've seen the capital markets collapse. I have also been the victim of asset forfeiture, and I've seen what happens when government can come in and take something from you when they might not otherwise been able to. And so Bitcoin, to me, it offers this kind of sense of hope and freedom for the cannabis industry, which was one of the original reasons why I got into the cannabis industry at a young age. It was this sense of freedom that I got from the industry that I'm still very much a believer in. I think that we have this, to comment on something you said at the very beginning of the conversation, Mike, we are doing something that I wouldn't say it's similar. I'd say it's almost verbatim to what Michael Saylor's doing. And there's something that he said that I think is very, very wise, in that sometimes being a genius is seeing the genius in something that someone else is doing and having the humility to accept it. And I think like that's where we're at, is like, I can see that, like, wow, this guy's done something. He saw something. He was a visionary. He believed in it, and it has done wonders for his company. So that was the long-winded way of answering your question. I hope I answered it, but I think that if it wasn't for the upbringing and what my dad kind of instilled in my brother and I don't know if I would have saw it. And because of that, after all the hours of research that I put into it, I've definitely landed on, I think that this, at one point in time in this industry, we were going downstream in a boat with a power motor on the back of it, hauling ass down the river. We ran into flat water. All of a sudden, we ran into a river going the other way. Capital markets collapse. And now, I feel like not just LEEF, but a lot of the cannabis companies were sometimes paddling up water with one oar. And I think that Bitcoin becomes this bifurcated strategy where we're now using our balance sheet to put not only another oar in the water, but I think that it's gonna turn the tides of our company and potentially the industry if other follow suit. So I will pause.
Jamie, since you've been both in the cannabis space and Bitcoin, why does cannabis need Bitcoin?
Sure. Cannabis needs Bitcoin, I think, for 2 main reasons. One is for capital, and the other is for growth. So, the cannabis industry has been starved of certainly institutional capital and marginalized on banking and major exchanges. So really marginalized from a rich capital environment in general. You can't list on the NASDAQ. And institutions, we're pretty much relegated to high net worth individuals. And so, given the headwinds, we haven't had federal legalization, we haven't had a descheduling, we haven't had a Safe Banking Act. We're still waiting to enter the stream of the mainstream capital markets. Bitcoin solves that because people want to invest in Bitcoin right now. They may not, investing in a cannabis company, it can be the biggest one or the smallest one, may not be at the top of their priority list. But when they have a Bitcoin-backed bond, let's say, which is the structure that most companies have been going to market with for an investment vehicle, there's a lot of demand for it. So, access to capital is the first reason why cannabis needs Bitcoin. Second reason is for growth. Micah mentioned a bifurcated business strategy, and that really is the concept behind adding Bitcoin to the company's balance sheet. Traditionally, a company is going to grow through their P&L, through an operational strategy, and that's important. Nobody should set that aside. But traditionally, what happens when a company spits off cash, let's say you're Apple or Amazon, you're spitting out, $1 billion a day, or whatever the number is, you're going to put that in, we'll say a balance sheet strategy would be a short-term preservation capital strategy where you're going to buy treasury notes yielding 5% before taxes. Well, that's not really a strategy to grow your company. That is a strategy to preserve your capital for a period of time before you either do a share buyback or distribute it out in dividends or acquire a company. What Bitcoin has done is revolutionize the way in which a company can grow through intelligent leverage and through accretive dilution. And so by accretive dilution, meaning that you dilute the amount of shares you have in the company for a harder asset such as Bitcoin that is going on your balance sheet that you cannot dilute, it is non-dilutive by nature, you are adding a accretive dilution to your company. You're adding an asset. The way I think about it is you're not really diluting. You are on a real basis, but you're adding a harder asset for a softer asset, right? Or you're exchanging your soft asset, which is your stock for a company, which is infinitely dilutive, for a hard asset, which is Bitcoin. Now, as that asset grows on your balance sheet, your net asset value grows, and investors are willing to pay more for your company. Your market cap grows. So it's a win-win-win. The investor wins because they make money on the stock. The company wins because they get Bitcoin. And the Bitcoin ecosystem wins because it is strengthened as more companies, individuals, and people come into the network. I guess I'll add one other item, if I may. So I said capital and growth. The last is performance, right? When you add the ability to reach into the capital markets for something they desire, and then you put it on your balance sheet and allow your company to grow, what you get is excellent performance through your stock price appreciation. And what we can look at is the 60 plus companies that have utilized this strategy. There's 60 public companies. There's obviously hundreds of privates. And we can look at MicroStrategy, right? They are the biggest example we have in front of us, and certainly not the only. And their stock price, since they announced in August 2020 their Bitcoin strategy and made their first purchase, they've appreciated about, it's over 3,000. I think it's 3,150% last time I looked on their stock price. We can take MetaPlanet, which is a real estate company. They announced their Bitcoin strategy in, I think, April of 2024, and their stock price has increased about 1,250%. Take another one, Similar Scientific healthcare company. They announced their Bitcoin strategy in May of 2024, and they've increased, it's over 100% their stock price. And all of them have increased their market cap, their trading volume, and their vol, which is great for the options market. There's been markets made now in the options market for these companies, which is what we want. So.
Okay, now, does this mean that LEEF Brands is going to, and this is a question for Micah, is going to stop being a cannabis company and you're just going to hold Bitcoin, or are you going to continue with this business? Talk to me about that.
No, not at all. It's quite the opposite. The goal is still the same. We are a cannabis company. We are growing. Our goal is to be the largest concentrate provider in the world at some point in time. That's our goal. And so I think Bitcoin it's just a way for us to drive value into the company beyond the P&L. We put something highly valuable and going up in value at an crazy rate on the balance sheet. It's going to drive excitement into our company in a way where let's be honest, the cannabis industry is tough right now, and it has been for a handful of years. At one point in time, that was not the case. We've lost that excitement. I think that comes back in 2025. So no, it's not and this is one of our shareholders who really wants us to do this, reached out to me, and I was having the same kind of question with him. I'm like, the beautiful thing about this Bitcoin strategy is that once it's done, it's not like it's another business that it's a distraction or something that we have to run or manage. It sits there, it does its thing. And so no, the long-winded way of answering your question, but the goal is definitely to stay the course. Our goal is to be the largest in California, which I think we're either there or very close to being there. Continue to grow California, start to move outside of California, and then at some point in time, we start to move outside of America with the business strategy.
I mean, from what I understand, you're the first cannabis company to do this, and I know that cannabis companies, in the U.S. have problems with the banking, and I'm thinking like why aren't other companies doing this? Why aren't other cannabis companies not only using this for their reserves, treasury reserves, but also for paying each other?
Jamie, you want to take that one, or you want me to take it?
Go for it. Yeah,
go for it. We'll go back and forth on this. Go for it.
I will say that we are the first public company to do this.
Cannabis company.
Thank you. First public cannabis company. People know that the cannabis industry has had a tough time getting banked, right? And has been marginalized from the banking system, whether that's, through accounts and getting debanked from your accounts, whether that's, ancillary business services like, revolving lines of credit or real estate loans. Like, we certainly don't get those through the banks. But what happened was, and if people ever watch Mark Andreessen, he had a fantastic interview with Joe Rogan recently, where he discussed Operation Choke Point 1.0 and 2.0, and that was the debanking. 1.0 was the debanking of the cannabis industry, and that was done. Micah and I both lived through that. We've both been had many bank accounts dropped, whether it was from our the big banks or our regional banks, and now 2.0 happened in the cryptocurrency space, and those are backed and funded by some of the world's largest VC firms. And so now this is all coming to the light. And I say that because the underbelly of cannabis and all these private companies that are transacting and public, but the private companies, they don't have the complexity of a board. They don't have the same type of fiduciary requirements that a public company does. And so it's easier for them to move into something like Bitcoin and stablecoin pairs to move their business forward and to transact. And it's being done, right? We announced in our Q3 results that we took our first Bitcoin in, and that was done in a B2B transaction. And that's part of our broader strategy, right? We're integrating our company fully into the Bitcoin ecosystem. So that's leveraging the capital markets. It's B2B transactions. It's also B2C transactions on the Lightning Network at our retail store. So, what has happened is that this is the Operation Choke Point 1.0 has pushed the cannabis industry into the digital crypto movement, and it's accelerating now. Because the ecosystem and the network is stronger than ever. There's $2 trillion in Bitcoin. It's a clear winner. There's all this macro market tailwind behind it. And every company, whether you're in cannabis or another industry, is going to have Bitcoin on their balance sheet in 10 years. It's inevitable. It's an amplifier effect. To your question to Micah, it's like, we're always going to be a cannabis company. We're always going to have a P&L strategy, and we're always going to grow our company by being the best. That doesn't change. We're going to be the best cannabis company we possibly can be. But what Bitcoin does on our balance sheet is it amplifies our P&L. It amplifies what we do. And it's an amplifier effect. And that amplifier effect is going to happen in every single industry. And it is going to push, I believe, most companies further and further away from traditional finance. And that means traditional rails like Visa, MasterCard, checking. It's going to push all companies into transacting in stablecoin and Bitcoin pairs. Your stablecoin is going to be utilized as your currency for daily transactions. And then when you have excess capital, you're going to put it into capital storage in Bitcoin and put it on your balance sheet. So it's been happening. It's going to continue to happen, and it's accelerating.
Yeah.
So how are you going to do it? In other words, I know you already bought Bitcoin, but are you going to be buying it just with extra cash that you have, or like extra profits that you have? Are you going to issue shares to buy Bitcoin? Are you going to get some debt to buy Bitcoin like MicroStrategy is doing? How are you going to do it?
I think we're going to bring everything together, right? It's a multi-pronged approach. We want to accumulate the Bitcoin in a myriad of ways. Traditionally, what has proven very successful in market is what is called intelligent leverage. And that's a convertible note. It's a convertible debenture that is backed by Bitcoin. So it's collateralized by Bitcoin. It allows the investor to get a sense of comfort, because if you believe that Bitcoin has tailwind and you believe it's a hard asset, then it strips away some of that downside risk of just taking equity in the company. You're collateralized by the Bitcoin, plus you get a coupon, and there may be other extra kickers. So when you convert, you're in the money, you get your kickers, you get your coupon, you were protected on the downside with the Bitcoin. And then you convert. Now the company has Bitcoin, the investor made money, and everybody wins. So it's intelligent leverage is what it is. And are we going to dilute? Yeah, we're going to dilute in an accretive fashion.
From the point of view of the company, when you take out the convertible, do you have to make a monthly payment? What happens if the price of Bitcoin gets cut in half? Because Bitcoin is volatile.
Mm-hmm.
You want to take that one, Jamie, or you want me to
go for it?
Yeah. So, well, as far as the volatility goes, and the payments, there's no interest payments for 5 years. And this is the first bond that we're going with. No interest payments for 5 years. Maturity date in 5 years. Bitcoin goes through what's called a halving process. And Jamie, if you got it correct, if you know more about this than I do, but I'm going to take a stab at this. It goes through a halving process. And so historically, what you've seen with Bitcoin is that it rises in value for 3 years, has a down year, and then comes back up again just prior to the next halving process. And what the halving process means is that every 4 years, the way that the network works is that it releases half of the amount of Bitcoin that it did the prior 4 years, and then eventually it gets to 21 million coins, which is where the scarcity element comes from. And the opposite of a fiat currency, where you're constantly printing and debasing the currency. So it goes up in value versus down in value. And so to give ourselves protection against that is that the bondholder can't call the note. We know it's volatile. So if it drops 50% in value, no one can call us and say, hey, we're calling the note. We've got 5 years. And our strong belief is that gives us the protection that makes it a de-risked investment, that we've got 5 years. And then if it does well, which we believe it does, then there's and the stock starts to perform and go the direction which we believe it's going to, we can force the convert. And the bondholder would then end up they would have a very attractive deal, and they would own equity in the company at that point.
At which point they can liquidate if they want, or they can hang on, right?
So do you have do you have a party that's offering you the convert?
When you say a party, you mean an investor?
Yes.
Yeah, so we are engaged with Canaccord. they are the lead agent, and we have quite a few parties that are interested in this convertible debenture.
Yeah. Just the announcement of us, we put out a press release just talking about how we accepted a Bitcoin in a B2B transaction. I think I've had more phone calls off of that than I have on any news that we put out in the past 2 years. So there's definitely a lot of excitement around it.
So talking about the excitement, what are the catalysts for Bitcoin?
Go ahead, Micah. You got a few?
Well, Trump has been elected, and the people that he is surrounding himself, it looks as if we have a very pro-Bitcoin cryptocurrency administration coming in. RFK, if anyone wants to go watch an amazing speech, gave a speech at which Bitcoin conference was that?
It was Bitcoin Nashville.
Yeah, that it's a beautiful speech. People should go listen to it. He's also talked about how he has most of his personal wealth in Bitcoin. That's how much of a believer he is. And Trump's put a handful of other people around him that are all pro Bitcoin as well. And Jamie, I'll need you to help me explain the gap financing aspect of it, but I'll hand that one to you just because I think that one's important.
So the catalyst for Bitcoin, I actually can't, if I can even back up a little further, because you asked, I want to respond to two things. One, you asked about the volatility, what happens, how does a company react to volatility? And volatility is vitality, right? People make money on volatility. You want volatility. If your stock or your asset is stable, I mean, if you want to invest in something stable, you invest in a US Treasury, right? You want vol. Vol is vitality. It is life. It is energy. And the way to think about Bitcoin, it is the fastest, smartest, most liquid network. It's open 24/7, 365. So when there's a catastrophic event that happens in the world, the stock market won't react till Monday at 9:30 a.m. Bitcoin reacts immediately. It reacts to the market, and it's always going to react. It's the fastest reaction in terms of what happens in the world. And so it's always going to be the most, even when we get to $100 trillion market cap, it is going to be a more volatile asset than the S&P because it's a more liquid market. We're not scared of volatility. In fact, I hope that the more Bitcoin we accumulate, we are going to see more volatility in our stock, because that will create an options market for LEEF. And we want an options market. We want calls and puts. We want to grow our company. That's something that MicroStrategy has shown, time and again. Having a stock going from 300 to 500 allows people to make money.
But can we have an options market before trading on the US exchange?
Does the TSX have an options market?
Yeah. So is the idea to uplist?
Oh, we're 100%. Yeah. So, I mean, as we speak, we're adjusting our accounting from indefinite intangibles to GAAP standards, and which is, I mean, this is another reason why Bitcoin has tailwinds. FASB changed their rules wherein starting in January 2025, at least in the US markets, companies that hold Bitcoin have to utilize GAAP accounting and fair value accounting for their Bitcoin holdings. Traditionally, you had to do indefinite intangibles, which means you could only mark it down, not up. And the shareholder couldn't really get a clear understanding of the true value of the company's Bitcoin on their balance sheet. Now, for us on our exchange, we have indefinite intangibles as well. And we are changing that to GAAP accounting to give our shareholders a clear picture of the value of our Bitcoin. So anyways, I was just explaining that volatility is good. It is lifeblood. We want it. And yes, we are going to uplist. Let's see, your second question, remind me here, outside of the
It
volatility.
was essentially like, what other catalyst events are there?
Yeah.
And
The big ones in front of us are obviously the strategic reserve for the U.S. Senator Lummis has announced and put a bill forward to purchase 1 million Bitcoin for the United States government. RFK and Michael Saylor and many other people in Trump's ear and this red wave has certainly helped. I think 1 million is going to be the base case. Where RFK obviously has proposed 4 million. So there's an enormous amount of Bitcoin that the U.S. is going to purchase, or likely that they are going to purchase. Other sovereign nations have announced as well: Brazil, Russia, Poland, Hong Kong. There's been talks about China, the UAE. The Bitcoin conference is happening right now. The UAE's been discussing adding the strategic reserve. So, we're going to see massive adoption at a sovereign nation level. Below that, we've obviously had an extraordinary amount of adoption in public and private companies. We're also seeing states. I know the state of Pennsylvania, state of Florida. You're seeing other institutions, pensions. I know the teachers union, I think I could be wrong. It was one of the unions in, excuse me, it was one of the pension funds in Wisconsin, I think added 500 million or so of IBIT. And then of course you've got the ETFs. The ETF since January has been the fastest growing ETFs the stock market's ever witnessed, right? They've got 1.2 million Bitcoin. They've purchased, valued over $120 billion, which is accumulated in their coffers in a little over 11 months. That's unprecedented, right? So there's just this enormous appetite, and we haven't even talked about the retail market, really, right? You like when your buddy calls you, when your dad or your friend calls you and say, "Hey, Mariusz, I hear you've been talking about Bitcoin a lot." That's when you know the retail market is in. Right now, we're just talking about smart money, intelligent money that is coming into Bitcoin.
When people look at public stocks, they know how to measure success, profits, revenue growth. But how can people measure the Bitcoin strategy success?
It's pretty basic, right? It's going to be basis, Bitcoin basis. So your average basis, what did you buy your Bitcoin at? It's going to be quantity of Bitcoin on your balance sheet. And then there's a metric that almost every company on the Bitcoin standard or with a Bitcoin Treasury Reserve has adopted, which is called a Bitcoin yield. And that's the quantity of shares that you've issued over the amount of Bitcoin you have. So what you're telling the shareholder is, for one share, you own this many Bitcoin, right? Let's say for one share, there's 0.0001 Bitcoin on the first transaction. And then you do some accretive dilution and issue another convertible note. It converts. The company dilutes. More Bitcoin is added. And now each share is worth 0.001 Bitcoin, right? So that's your Bitcoin yield. That is a pretty standard metric that companies are using for the shareholder to understand how much Bitcoin they receive per share they purchase.
Micah, you were talking about at the beginning how your father, taught you sound money. And I personally studied sound money too. 1971, we weren't backed by gold anymore. And, Peter Schiff, right? That group of people. And so people that study Austrian economics, or some of them, they don't view Bitcoin as the solution, right? And yet you came to the conclusion that you came to the opposite conclusion of Peter Schiff.
Yeah, I would say I disagree with that last part. I don't think that Austrian economists, I think that the Libertarian Party and people that, consider themselves to be Austrian economists, do believe in Bitcoin. Peter Schiff, who I respect, I think he's very, very smart, happens to be one that doesn't. And I've listened to every interview. As Jamie and I started going down this road, I wanted to listen to everything. And I've been listening to Peter Schiff for a long time. Yeah, he happens to be one of them. He doesn't believe it. He's, he owns a gold company and is very bought in on gold, as am I. I don't think that Bitcoin replaces gold. It surpassed silver recently in terms of market cap size. I think that Bitcoin will eventually chew into a lot of the other asset classes that are out there, gold being one of them. But I personally hold gold. I don't plan on losing gold. I think that it has similarities in the sense that it's not replicatable. It's easy to send across time and space in a way that gold can't even do. I've had gold, to where I've held on to it, and it's not easy. If I want to make a payment in gold, it's not easy. It is doable. It's liquid. So I think that most people that I've spoken to that believe in a non-fiat system that are actually believers in Bitcoin. I think where, there's other, theories out there that might, like Peter Schiff has a couple of them. I don't necessarily agree with them, but yeah, I think that most people that are into the Austrian way are definitely for Bitcoin, not against. But you got Peter Schiff, and there are others that are not.
If I may, I want to put Saifedean Ammous on a platform here because he has really delivered such a fantastic message to the Bitcoin community. And if anybody hasn't read his book, The Bitcoin Standard, and he's got many others, but that one is the one that underpins so much Bitcoin philosophy and has allowed people to see the light of what hard money is, what sound money is, what soft money is, what Keynesian economics are, and what Austrian economics are. And I would actually say, I'm sure there are Austrian economists who are just gold bugs and haven't done their time to understand, haven't invested the time to understand the Bitcoin ecosystem, but our philosophies align. And if you have done the research to understand the Bitcoin ecosystem, which I do believe Peter Schiff has done, then you just have to go a layer deeper and ask, why is Peter Schiff not a Bitcoin advocate? Part of it could be an ego, right? But I think really, let's just follow the money, right? He's a founder of Euro Pacific Asset Management, which is it's a gold investment fund, right? He is a fiduciary for many, many investors of gold. And unfortunately, he's led his investors astray. He's not allowed the truth to come out. And he suffered greatly. He knew about Bitcoin at $10. Mm-hmm. He was advised to buy, it's $100,000 a coin, right? It has outperformed gold. It will continue. It is, if I can make a brief example of the power of the digital network. We used to have photos, right? Like ones you actually look at and put on your wall and put in photo albums, right? Nobody knew Kodak was going to go out of business, but the iPhone and Instagram put it out of business pretty quick. Amazon put bookstores out of business, right? Netflix put Blockbuster out of business, right? The digitization of physical assets is infinitely superior. And Bitcoin is that for money. Bitcoin is the digitization of money, of sound money. And it is scalable on a level nobody has ever seen. It is the most secure network, and it abides by all the principles and aligns with all the principles and was founded by the principles of Austrian economics. So I would just say Peter Schiff is probably an outlier as an Austrian economist, but our values still align. We just kind of have to, dig a little deeper and see ask ourselves maybe why he is unwilling to recognize Bitcoin as sound money.
All right. Thank you guys for doing this. Do you have any final thoughts about the Bitcoin strategy or just LEEF Brands in general?
Yeah, I think I would just kind of leave with this. I want to just reiterate that, we're a cannabis company, and we're going to continue to be a cannabis company. We're going to continue to grow our business, and we think that 2025 is going to be a transformational year for LEEF. And I think that Bitcoin is just adding fuel to the fire, so to speak. And we're excited about it. And we're excited that, you know, there's been others before us in tech industries and all these other industries. But to be the first in the cannabis sector to do this, I think you asked the question earlier, you know, why haven't other cannabis companies done this? Someone's always got to go first, right? And I think that what you'll see is that we're going to go first. We're going to run, not walk. And you're going to see others go, oh shit, you know, look what these guys are doing. And we're going to have a lot of other eyeballs that wouldn't otherwise be on the company as a result of it. And so I would just ask people to pay attention and look out for us.
Jamie, any final thoughts?
The capital markets want Bitcoin and stablecoin pairs. It's servicing our business, and you know, with faster rails, lower fees, it's accelerating the future of finance. Everyone will be on the most powerful digital network. We all want to, and everybody's going to buy Bitcoin at the price they deserve. And so with that said, you know, there's very real consequences the longer you wait. We're excited to do this at LEEF Brands. And I encourage everybody else to join the future. Use Bitcoin to grow your business. Your shareholders will thank you.